Welcome to the John Fourcade Show. One of our John Fourcade specials this week, a 2017 Ford Escape, is Black Friday sales event. You can get that Ford Escape for $19,975 plus tax. That's over $4,500 in total savings. Again, 2017 Ford Escape, $19,975, over $4,000 in total savings. We'll find a better deal than right here at Veterans Ford. We're back here on the John Fourcade Show. Mike Detillier along with John Fourcade. John, 4-6, the Saints are at this stage. Basically, no room for error.
Right.
If you're trying to get into the playoffs, the NFC East, if you think you're going to get in as a wild card, you can forget it. The way the NFC East is playing right now, you've got to win the NFC South to get in. And you got to have some help along the way by somebody either knocking off Atlanta or, basically you're with Carolina right now. You're trying to sport into that. So it's going to be interesting down the stretch. Can Atlanta continue that momentum that they had earlier in the year when they were a juggernaut, so to speak, on the offensive side? The football, okay on defense, nothing great, but they only got a handful of really good defensive teams to begin with. Can Matt Ryan continue to play at that high level?
When you talk about the Atlanta Falcons, they got 4 losses. And in the 4 losses they played in, very easily could be 0 losses.
Yep.
They play good enough to win those football games. It's not like they're getting pounded when they lose. So we got to catch them. We're 2 games behind them. Whoa, guess who's in front of us? A team called Tampa Bay, who went into Kansas City and beat Kansas City at home.
Shocking.
Which Kansas City don't lose at home. So we got to leapfrog them, and then we got to fight off the guys that's below us, or we tied with them, Carolina Panthers. You're right. There's no room for error here. If they lose another game, that means they got to go 9-7 for the rest of the season. 10-6 wins this division. No worse, maybe 9-7. But you can't get in as a playoff team as a wild card in this division. You're right. The East is going to represent someone.
One of the things, too, it's a crazy thing with Tampa, and I do some work with the Titans Network, is that they can't win at home. They are a really good away team, and yet you would think that if you've got them in your backyard, and you're talking about in September and October, those weather conditions, it's hot, it's humid, and you're not used to that. That would be a great home field advantage, and yet it hasn't been for the Bucs. They've played much better on the road than they have at home, and the same thing with the Tennessee Titans. They've played much better away than they have at home. They beat Green Bay a week ago, but it had been a long time since they had won on the road. It's crazy how the NFL is in that you would think home field advantage would be much bigger than it is, and yet for some teams, that's really not the case. And you see it now even in New Orleans. Really, home field advantage, you don't have that anymore.
Yeah, it's I don't know what the reasons are behind it, but there's teams right now. The Patriots lost the other day at home on national television against Seattle. Usually they win those games. But, yeah, there's some teams now, Mike, that just can't win at home. We're one of them. We've had problems. A couple of years ago we went so long without losing home game. But now other teams are getting better. Teams are getting some good football players. And I think being in a professional team nowadays, it doesn't matter if you're home or away. You got to get dressed, go play 60 minutes of football, and go play whoever you got to play. You got as many good players on your team as those guys have. And sometimes it's just a luck of the draw. You do win a game that's on the road, and you could steal one from them. And right now, though, Tampa Bay can't win at home. Neither can the New Orleans Saints. And the Carolina has trouble struggling winning at home. But we're all catching the Atlanta Falcons. It's going to be tough.
One of the things, one home team that's still top of the list, Seattle.
Yes.
And they're starting to get healthy. Now, they got beat up at the running back position. There are a lot of rumors in Seattle. In fact, I talked to somebody who was on the coast this week, told me, Marshawn Lynch, they're talking to him about the possibility of coming out of retirement to play down the stretch for them. You look at Seattle, and they've got a few injuries. Earl Thomas is down for a few weeks, but once Cam Chancellor got back, that defense was better. My thing is, if Chancellor's playing when the Saints are playing Seattle in the Dome, Seattle wins that game. And it goes to show you 1 or 2 guys do make a difference. They didn't have Michael Bennett that particular week also, but Seattle still is a great home team, and I think other than Dallas in the NFC, I think they're the best team in the NFC.
That's the only 2 teams right now you got to look at. Seattle, the way they playing, and what they have done last season, last 6-7 games of the season, that's when they went on a roll to get where they were at. Same thing's happening this year. They had struggled early, no running game. Guys were hurt. Wilson was injured. He's back in the form. The defense is playing well. The only difference might be is if they have to go on the road to play Dallas in a playoff game. Dallas has been playing very well this season. But that's the only 2 teams I see in the NFC that's really up above everybody else. And then when you talk about the AFC, my hat has to go off the Oakland Raiders. They're playing some phenomenal football. I still like the Patriots. You don't know what the Denver Broncos will bring to the table, but we shall see because there's a few more games left, and Oakland does play Denver one more time. But it's going to be real interesting to see who comes from the NFC West, NFC, and who comes from the AFC to meet in the Super Bowl.
The funny thing with Oakland is none of those guys have walked down that football aisle before. And there's certain teams that play really good in the regular season, postseason not quite as well. We've seen this with Kansas City, a really good regular season team. They get in the postseason, one and done, gone, out of there. Jim Mora was like that with the Saints. One and done, come playoff time. It's funny how some teams are structured like the Patriots to advance. I think the most disappointing team, though, in the NFC has to be Arizona.
Yes.
You look at how that has just fallen apart all across the board with them. Bruce Arians is talking about, man, he had chest pains and everything else. Man, you kind of wondering a little bit about at that stage, of his life and everything. You see things that just aren't going right. I think it all starts at quarterback. Carson Palmer isn't playing nearly as well. I think the same thing can be said about Carolina. I think it all rests on Cam Newton.
Well, my whole take is you don't blame one guy for the whole picture of why you're losing. And they want to blame Carson Palmer. They're going to blame him a little bit. But also, the defense hasn't played up to par either. Their team is, before the season began, everybody was picking Arizona to be one of the top teams to maybe get to the Super Bowl. They've struggled at quarterback. Defense has let them down a little bit. They haven't really played that we say the Arizona Cardinals should be playing. And you flip it over to what you said about Cam Newton. He struggled a little bit too. He struggled big time this season throwing the football. And then I think he's a little afraid of running the ball because he's so afraid now. He's got in his mind that if I get out the pocket, I run. If I get hit in the head, he's so worried about the officials in the league finding players or penalizing. Just go play football. You're going to get hit. And so Carolina's struggling with their quarterback. Arizona's struggling with their quarterback. I don't see either one of these two teams making it.
Well, I watched the Rams game against Miami. That was painful to watch, to see really Goff. He really struggled so much. John, he didn't complete a pass over 10 yards. Everything was short and immediate. They didn't let him throw downfield at all. And, the Dolphins' defense is legit. They got a really good defense, but he made them look like they were the fearsome foursome the way he was playing in that football game. Gurley gives him a little bit, but if I can put 7 or 8 men in the box to stop him, man, I got no fear of Goff. And then at the end, as well as the Rams defense had played, they had an opportunity to win it at the end. When watching that, I had no confidence that he could take that team downfield and win the game for him. But Tannehill did. I give him a lot of credit.
Well, the whole thing is that, look at the Rams game. In 4 games, this past 4 weeks they played, they've only scored 36 points. Offense is the worst I've seen in football. You got to look at your offense coordinator. I don't care what anybody says. Maybe they buddies, but they got to start deciding that this guy's not getting the job done. Now, granted, you don't have a quarterback either. Or your backup's not one either. But they were in this game to win it, Mike. You had a 10-7 lead, and you end up losing inside 2 minutes left. You lose 14-10 when you really play dominating defense. So I got to tell you right now, the Rams got a great defense and a horrible offense, and I don't think Jeff Fisher's going to beat it at the end of the year.
I wonder a little bit about that. He's one of those guys that somehow survives
Right.
every year. And now, unbelievably, he is tied for the second most losses in NFL history. Unreal. Tom Landry's got 250 wins at the same amount of losses as Jeff Fisher. We'll be back with more of the John Fourcade Show, sponsored each week by Veterans Ford.